respect makes the empire's fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. Some brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The international unites the world in song.
Okay, we are back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report, the Sunday Roundup, and happy May Day to everyone. And we've been talking to Lark from Texas. Lark, you were talking, and we had a break, but complete your thought there.
Well, I think what I want to suggest is this. We have a platform for educating people. It may be our last-ditch opportunity. We need to explain to people that this corporatism has, or what we can call fascism, has combined with the communist. And they're all under the aegis of monopoly capitalists who have a monopoly on the issue of credit and a counterfeit currency. This is the story of our lives. We have a new system of government. It is called a communitarian system. It's colored by communitarian law or community law. And it's advised by a philosophy which has been dreamed up over time called communitarianism. This is not a system of government that anybody living in this country can be happy with. Unless you, like a useful idiot or an unwitting dupe, simply march to the tune, or dance to the tune, I should say, of your paymaster. What is really at stake today in this communitarian form of government, which is an authoritarian system, and it's worldwide, is we will lose our expectation of privacy, the right to own property. And that includes the right to even own your own body and the real estate between your ears. Now, this is to suggest that there isn't anybody that works in this government or for this government that can possibly represent your interest or my interest or anybody else's interest.
Well, it's definitely true. Every time you go through the airport, you experience the fact that they're not representing your interests by what they're doing to people at the airports. But thanks for your call, Lark. We've got other callers hanging on here, and I want to get to them. Let's go to Harvey in Florida. Harvey, are you with us?
Yes, good evening, Wayne.
Hello.
Yes, how are you doing?
Good.
You know, good. I was listening to some clips from the correspondence dinner last night. Were you at that function last night?
I it's very tough to try to cover these people if you socialize with them. 2 years ago, I went to a couple of the parties around the dinner itself. I didn't go to the dinner, and it was quite clear that this is nothing more than a navel. I call it a navel gazing event. These people sit around and they want to see who's there, and they're all self-important. It really is a sickening thing. I guess the closest thing we have to it is the the Academy Awards in L.A., and then we get some of those characters at a correspondence dinner. I mean, these are not correspondents. I was talking to an old friend of mine, an old Washington journalist who went to those correspondence dinners years ago. He said, "Yeah, I remember when there were like reporters there and journalists, and now you get these floozies from Hollywood and, trying to see how much skin they can show with their, he just, he doesn't, he of course, I mean, that's what it is.
One of the most sickening displays that every year it gets more abominable than the year before. I remember when Bush had the video. Remember when Bush had the video of him looking in the desk for weapons of mass destruction?
It was horrible. It was horrible.
At the mass murderer?
Yes, well, absolutely.
This yesterday with him, I mean, imagine this guy's making sure this is a mass murderer. Obama is a mass murderer. As a matter of fact, last night, NATO, which is under U.S. control, blew women and children to
Yes.
bits.
Yes.
I mean, Gaddafi's grandchildren were blown to bits.
Right.
The same night he's making jokes on the stage. I mean, it's like having Hitler doing a friar's roast.
Exactly.
And these correspondents don't have the courage to utter one word and just sit there laughing.
No, and most of the correspondents were there, booing Donald Trump. I mean, look, this whole thing is a sideshow, of course. Last year, I remember at the Correspondents' Dinner, we had the Gulf oil disaster. We had people, watching the oil just come in and destroy their livelihoods. And there's Obama yucking it up again last year. I mean,
this bread circus is a new meaning. Give the people bread and circuses. This gives it a whole new meaning. When are they going to start feeding some people to the lions?
Absolutely. And, it's just so sad. And then you get these corporate media types, and they're all there, they all prance in, they all want to be seen, and then the politicians are there, the Chris Matthews and all the others, and it's just a sickening thing. And I think it just goes to show that, maybe the original intention of the Correspondents' Dinner was to get the president before journalists to kind of loosen up. But look, I remember stories about President Truman actually walking over to the press club in the afternoon with one Secret Service agent, and he would go to the bar and he would order a couple of drinks, and everything was off the record, and he would just tell these journalists, hey, it's just, let me tell you what's going on over in the White House, and that was one-on-one with the President of the United States without all these press secretaries and aides and
spokespeople.
Yeah.
Everybody has a spokesperson in Washington. They can't even speak for themselves. And he's reading this script. But this is like Hitler at the Friars Club. This is one sickening. I can't imagine what the world thinks about our country. This is an abomination. Mass murder around the world with our drones and our missiles and our ships, shooting missiles into people, blowing them to bits, and they're yucking it up.
It's horrible. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's one of the things where, I shake my head. I've been in Washington now for the most part since 1982, and this place is just getting worse and worse and more detached from what's really going on. And we know Obama goes down to, Alabama, But, the guy is so totally aloof, even when he goes to these disaster sites. And that's all scripted as well. My daughter used to go to school in Washington, D.C., to college.
When I used to sometimes I would take the subway underneath the Pentagon, the one that runs right underneath the Pentagon, and I'd see these generals that meeting with different foreign peoples, peddling death, selling the weapons of mass destruction, literally. And I always got the feeling this is the heart of evil.
You're right.
Heart of evil.
It is it's right near where I live, and I call it the five-sided Death Star. And, and the last caller was talking about cutting back big government. Well, let's start with the Pentagon. This is the most bloated, and it really, what does it give us? It gives us death, it gives us destruction, and it fattens up the wallets of a lot of contractors, Lockheed Martin and all the rest of these, General Electric. We can start with them, but what are they cutting? They want to cut, and you're calling from Florida, they want to cut Medicare, they want to cut Medicaid. They're not going to touch any of these weapon systems. You might be aware, the IMF recently came out and said by 2016, China will eclipse the United States as far as the world's biggest economy. Well, that's going to happen. It probably already has, but they're going to let us down easy on this news. Well, if we're going to become Sweden, then we need to have like a Swedish-sized military. We don't need to be projecting this force around the world. We need to bring the troops home, worry about our own backyard, get the National Guard to do what they're intended to do, to take care of people down in places like Mississippi and Alabama.
It's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. We can only hope that the hand of God smites everybody in that Pentagon, in the CIA, and all their evil, the real heart of evil. We only hope for the hand of God.
Yes, it really, we're going to get what's coming to us, and it's sad because a lot of these guys that join and women that join the military are doing it because there's no jobs where they live. This is like their last ditch effort to try to.
I know.
And
that was the plan. It worked perfectly. I'll give you a personal story. I know a guy that works on the missiles for the missiles of death on the ships, and he okays them for the big contractors. And the other day I ran across him with and really feel like his socks.
Right.
How low have we sunk, my friend?
Well, I'll tell you, we have, and thanks for calling, Harvey from Florida, and hopefully we'll get through this. But sometimes I just have my doubts. Thanks for your call, and let's go to Bill, who's calling from Ohio.
Hey, Wayne, how you doing?
Good, Bill.
Hey, I've always appreciated your research. I just wanted to let you know I did hear an interview with you last week, I think, where, of course, you had talked about possibly moving, and I was just wondering if there was an update on that. I certainly don't hope you go, but I want you to be safe, number one. And then I did have a kind of a question. I hope it's not a new topic for you. I'm not. You had mentioned it earlier. And I've really tried to wrap my head around this for quite some time, and it has to do with the unions, because I found it very interesting. I looked up the history of the United Auto Workers in the 30s. Yeah. My grandfather helped organize the Railroaders Union, which is part of the BLE out of Cleveland.
They all worked hard. They worked hard, those
You're
guys.
damn right. And, I always tell people, if you like your weekends and your 40-day work weeks or 45, 50-hour work weeks, you like your children being in school rather than at the factory, those kinds of things, you can thank a union. Your benefits, your Social Security, those kinds of things, you better be sure to thank a union. But, here's what I don't get, Wayne, and I'm really trying to understand this. The UAW, I believe, was formed in 35 or 36. I know Henry Ford was not crazy about it, but I think Henry treated his people quite well. So he, and that was really his protest. But of course, now the corporations, Ford and GM, prospered under those unions. GM was the largest employer in the country in the 1950s, right. And they put out arguably the best automobiles that the world has ever seen at the time. Some could argue maybe Mercedes was up there, and that's true. But of course, down in Cuba, you can see all these vehicles running firsthand. I mean, it's just unbelievable. What in the hell?
Oh, absolutely.
My question is, Wayne, what in the hell happened? I've heard it mentioned that. Of course, the unions had been infiltrated. Management slipped, got shoddy. Some of the civil rights laws, they got some bozo workers. Would you say all of the above, or I'm trying to understand this.
Look. Yeah, I think what happened to the UAW is what happened essentially to the AFL-CIO. They, in fact, became corporations themselves. I remember about 12 or 13 years ago in Washington, the janitors went on strike against the AFL-CIO headquarters. Now, stop and think about that. In other words, the union, the major union headquarters weren't paying the janitors a fair wage. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that say about the unions? The UAW, I think what happened with the UAW is and I think Walter Reuther was assassinated. We know that he went down in a plane in 1970, and Walter Reuther was basically a horse of a different color when it comes to union leadership. He was basically trying to get back to the basics of union leadership and talking about, look, it's not just workers' rights. We gotta get people unionized who are not being represented right now. Mm-hmm. He was very much an activist, and of course his plane went down. Mm-hmm. And the other thing about Reuther, he also went after the war in Vietnam in a big way. He saw what was going on there.
Father Coughlin too, Wayne, in the 30s, late 30s, he had, I don't know, 50 million listeners, was very anti-Federal Reserve, very anti-war, pro-union, pro-worker, what do you call this, social justice party, something along those lines. And of course, he was just silenced. I mean, he had more radio listeners than anyone here in this country at the time, and his superiors just cut him off. He kind of put him out to pasture, and that was it.
And we now know that one of his biggest funders was none other than Joseph P. Kennedy. You picked that up in the history. Of course, we all know what happened to the two Kennedy brothers as well. And I think we had somebody who, yes, they did well in the American system, but I think the Kennedys, unlike the Bushes and the Rockefellers and these other political families, tried to give back something. They through public service. Look, they're not perfect, but compare the Kennedys to the Bushes, and there's no more Kennedys in Congress, but now they're talking about running more Bushes for political office, and Jeb is maybe got his eye on the White House.
Plutocracy, we'll get more of the same. I just thought it's real interesting, though. The unions, the Ford, GM, they all prospered in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. Then it seemed like in the 60s, things started to kind of go to hell a little bit. Of course, in the 70s, I'm guessing that's when, they broke the steel, all of the steel, I have family in Pittsburgh, and I mean, people have been there 20, 30 years. They lost their benefits. I mean, nothing. 150,000 steel workers, even Legacy, just put out of business, and they lost all their benefits. They lost everything. We started buying cheap steel and putting out crappy cars. Was it? I'm still trying to understand this. Was it? Do you think the globalization that played a part in this?
Well, look how the unions look when Clinton and Gingrich forced through NAFTA. Where was the union outreach?
Exactly,
there?
That's what I mean. So of course you had infiltration.
Yes. The unions were infiltrated. You had these really lackluster union leaders. No one like a Walter Reuther. And look, George Meany always said there will never be a general strike in the United States.
Introducing IXL.